couple of things that I found to be real interesting. I work with the Charlotte Rescue Mission some, in Charlotte, in the Carolinas. And one of the things we came to there that was just really liberating, just explosive for them, was the concept of strategic alliances. And we identified who are their strategic alliances and how can we proactively work with them, and actually hiring a person just to work with strategic alliances. And I think it's like double their horsepower. Because when what it turns out is that there are certain organizations that if you can partner with them or ally with them or et cetera, it can really accelerate your horsepower. One of the things I find is that, because I have a small company, that there are certain clients that we could have that could accelerate everything we're doing versus just sort of let us maintain what we're doing. And so one thing I would suggest to you is to make a list of who are the strategic partners, the strategic allies, not that they merge with you, but this is an obvious input, but take some time to really define that and proactively go after them. Because with the right partnership, you can go a lot faster. A second dimension would be in terms of small companies. A friend of mine named Bo Mitchell he is an opportunity-oriented person. And he has one question that is just an amazing question. He basically says, how much do you want to make? Well, it's a series of questions, but it's one concept. How much do you want to make? He goes, what would it take to make you happy in terms of how much do you want to make, or how much do you want to make on this project, or whatever? How much do you want to make? So that all your bills are paid, all your debts are retired, you got working capital, you got everything you want. What figure would that take? How much sales or how much service or whatever would that take? And the third question is, who is the one person we could go to, and if they said yes, all that would be done? And it's like, I looked at him like, what are you talking about? It's like it just didn't register to me. And he said, there's one person that if you talk to the right person and sold them the right idea, all that would happen. And I'm saying it's an interesting reflection for the plane ride on the way home, is to say, what one person or organization or strategic partner could buy enough, contract to enough, whatever, to just make us whole? And then how do we proactively go after that one person? Because my position is more, how could we service 50 people over 10 years to make that happen? His is, what one person could make the decision today that makes it happen. That's just another little perspective on it. One of the big struggles with small companies is the phrase I hear a lot is, we're the best kept secret. It's like we're a best kept secret, like nobody knows about us. We wish we had more visibility. The problem is, there are three dimensions you have to keep always balanced out. Ability, credibility, and visibility. Because if your visibility exceeds your ability, it destroys your credibility. And so what you have to always be aware of is you want to have enough visibility to drive your sales or your service or whatever. But if you get too much visibility and you can't handle what you've got, it'll destroy your credibility. That's a balance you have to keep all the time, too. Another thing is, like I told the other gentleman, just getting advisors. Cheryl and I look back and say, if we had to do over, we would get an advisory council far earlier. We'd be looking for who are the 3 or 4 people that could give us wisdom and counsel and perspective to get a business mentor team. And in this case, maybe it's the FCCI teams. Maybe it's to be a part of one of those, but basically get some people who have been up through the ranks that you've been up through to be your mentor. I think having a mentor, I wrote a book called Mentoring, and I see it as one of the keys to accelerating from wherever you are to wherever you want to be. Because you get someone who is experienced at doing what you're trying to do, they can move you from trial and error to experience as a base, and that's very accelerating. Another thing is to remember not to forget Drucker's 3 fundamental questions about business. And you've all heard them probably, but we tend to forget them in the everyday pace of things. And that is, who is our customer? What do they need? And therefore, what business are we in? And I'd like to explain to you a concept that I've developed called informal research. There are 2 kinds of research. One is informal, one is formal. Informal research says that you can learn 80% of what you need to know by asking the right 10 people the right 10 questions in about 10 minutes apiece. The other 20% you have to pay George Barner or George Gallup $100,000 to find out for you. In other words, if you would just take some time, and sometimes it's just the person answering the phone, just teach them, here's the question of the week I want to ask. Everybody that calls in here, ask them this question, which is a little market research, informal market research. But basically, to keep asking and have your team keep driving and driving and driving, who is our customer? Because I find that gets really blurred out, because you get a sort of a prospect over here and a prospect, that it's like all of a sudden everybody's our customer, and that'll drive you crazy. So who is our customer? And then through informal research, call a few of them and say, what do you need at this point that you're not getting, particularly from someone like us? And then, therefore, how can we add that service or that material or that product or resource? Those would be just some sort of off the top of the head things. Again, maximizing strength, making weakness irrelevant. Whatever, I don't care if you got 3 people or 30 people or 3,000 people. What you're trying to do is maximize their strength. Define it and then try to maximize it. Those would be some of the things, I'd say. You're welcome. Any ahas in there? Okay. Yes.
So the small to medium business person, you've met with a lot of CEOs across the country, and I'm wondering if you could give us a few examples of how they integrated their faith into their workplace with their employees. Some things that have worked.
The question is, how have people integrated their faith in their workplace, with their team? People differ on how they want to do that a lot. And they differ partly based on their comfort in sharing their faith. It depends a lot on how they start out. For example, I work some with Chick-fil-A. They're not a small or medium-sized company, but they have a very, very overt Christian perspective. And they just say what they're going to say. I've spoken at their conferences, and it's sort of like Bobb. We've had Howie Hendricks. We've had, Josh McDowell. Say whatever you want to say about God, Christ, Jesus, as Christ. You can say whatever you want to say. Just let them go. Whereas another company that I work with that has about 2,500 people on the staff, he basically says, I don't want to be sued. I don't want to sort of superimpose. I want to create an environment where the environment itself speaks very loudly, that this is a Christian environment with Christian values and integrity and etc. And let them find out that we're Christians. He's a Dutch Reformed person and has sort of we don't brag about what we do, we just do it, and we do it well, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I have probably interviewed, I do a lot, whenever they're going to appoint a regional director from a store manager, an assistant manager, a store manager to a regional director, I do all the interviewing for that. By the way, be interested in this. in the interview process, what we've discovered is that there are three perspectives we have to consider. One is their past, and are there any skeletons there? One is their present in terms of their actual performance, and one is their potential. I better put potential there. And their intake interview process is so tight that they screen out 99.9% of problem pasts. I mean, their intake interview process is amazing. Then the current regional managers actually say, here's their present performance. Because you don't want to promote someone with a past that's faulty, or they've had embezzlement in their past or something like that. And you don't want to promote someone simply because they look good, if they aren't really able to do the job and what they've been assigned. But my role is to interview them for their potential, what I think is their potential as an executive. Because since I've spent so much time with executives, it's pretty quick for me to assess a person. Does this person have, what it takes to be a regional manager or whatever. But isn't that interesting? You look at their past, their present, their actual performance, and their potential. Those are three things to look at very carefully. But the bottom line is, I probably interviewed one-to-one between 200 and 300 of this person's staff. I've never heard him say in public that he's a believer, but by word of mouth, it's become known that he's a real heavy contributor to Christian organizations through just the grapevine kind of thing. I think every person there knows that he's a believer, and they watch him like a hawk, and they admire him like very few people I've ever seen. And the bottom line is, he has a very strong witness without doing anything overt that I can talk about, other than with his personal money, investing heavily in mission projects that are sort of known by the staff. I had one person who was the national director of an association. When I talked about reporting, there are 6 questions you need to hear from your staff when they report to you, and that is assuming that they have real clear priorities. There's assuming your staff, you've given them real clear priorities with their, what are their problems they're going to solve, goals to reach, and opportunities to seize. They're real clear on what they're about. Then there are 6 questions you need to ask them. Number 1, what decisions do you need from me to keep going? Number 2, what problems are you having that I need to get engaged in because you're stuck and you aren't going to get to the priorities if you don't solve these problems? Number 3 is, what plans are you making that we haven't discussed? Because I don't want you to surprise me now. If I get down there and you say, you already bought that $30 million building. You say, you what? I say, well, yeah, I thought it would be a good idea. What progress have you made? This is where the numbers and the financials and that kind of stuff, the sales reports, whatever, progress. And then number 5, how are you doing personally? On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is worst day of my life and 10 is, it's like the best day of my life kind of thing. How are you doing personally? Because unless you know where your staff is personally, it's like if they go along, bump along at 8.5, 8, 9, 9.5, 10, 9, they bump along way up there, all of a sudden they hit a 3, you better be aware of the fact that something has dramatically happened. And then number 6 is, how can I pray for you? And a lot of Christian organizations and churches and stuff like that, I say, there are the 6 questions you need to know from your staff. Well, this fella was the head of a statewide association. He asked his staff how he could pray for him. It wasn't a Christian organization. And 2 weeks later, one of his staff left and sued the state association for, was it religious harassment? Because he asked me how he could pray for me. It was like, come on. But I'm saying in a secular setting, you're in a different ball game, and you have to decide, just where you are and how much of it you can do and how much of it you can talk about and like that. But I think the real key is, then a fourth thing, focus on the family, where I'm on the board, has a thing they work with Henry Blackaby and Mac McQuiston called the CEO Forum. And it's mostly Fortune 100 and 500 CEOs. And they're developing a whole lot of support network for how do you deal with the the various very liberal agendas that are coming into the companies. And so you deal with it in a sort of a different way if it's a publicly traded company versus solely owned and et cetera. So each company is actually a little bit different. I think this is where, again, the FCCI roundtables would be a great place to sort of share what did you try, what worked, et cetera. But it varies a great deal. From the common denominator of my clients, about a third of my clients are larger, fast-growing churches. About a third are nonprofit organizations like Campus Crusade or Focus on the Family or like that. And about a third are for-profit companies with Christian leadership. But the common denominator is Christian leadership. But how comfortable those Christian leaders feel making an overt altar call, so to speak, at every staff meeting, as compared to just letting their faith be a statement, quiet statement. It varies a great deal. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's a reflection on your